So let's proceed with our ultimate final coaching in physiology. And let's mention the must-knows about nerve physiology as well as nerve pathology. What are the three main parts of a neuron? What are the three main parts of a neuron? We have the cell body, we have the axon, then we have the dendrites. The three main parts of a neuron. So we have the cell body, the axons, then we have the dendrites. So here, this is the cell body, this is the axon, then you have the dendrites here. So the cell body, also known as the soma, the axon, then the dendrites. And there's a couple of important structures here, especially the nodes of Ranvier. Now, what type of conduction occurs when the impulse goes along the nodes of Ranvier? So this is saltatory conduction, okay? In saltatory conduction, the impulse jumps from one node of Ranvier to another. And what is the explanation or the significance of the node of Ranvier? What ion is found in very high concentration at the nodes of Ranvier? In fact, the highest concentration of this ion is found at the nodes of Ranvier. And this will explain why conduction is fastest along the nodes of Ranvier. So it is the sodium channels. Very good. The highest concentration of sodium channels are found in the nodes of Ranvier. Now, question. What produces the myelin sheath in the central nervous system? What cell? Central nervous system is the oligodendrocyte. What about the peripheral nervous system? What produces the myelin sheath in the peripheral nervous system? It's PS. It's the Schwann cell. Okay. The Schwann cell produces the myelin sheath in the peripheral nervous system. Now, what is the normal resting membrane potential? What is the normal resting membrane potential? Always remember the membrane potential at rest is negatively charged. Okay, the membrane potential at rest is negatively charged. So in the nerve, magic number is negative 70 millivolts. It is negative 70 millivolts. And what do we call the specialized rough endoplasmic reticulum that is found in the neuron? It's a specialized rough endoplasmic reticulum that we find in the neuron. This is known as the nasal substance. Again, this is known as the nasal substance. Now, neurotransmitters, we're going to mention the key points in the book. Now, I want you to remember the inhibitory. I believe in our classes, I've taught you to memorize just GABA and glycine. Now, tip, histamine is both inhibitory and excitatory. Then we also have nitric oxide. There are now 4 inhibitory neurotransmitters I want you to remember. So please jot this down. Question. From what amino acid does nitric oxide come from? From what amino acid does nitric oxide come from? Okay, nitric oxide comes from arginine. Question: is arginine an essential or non-essential amino acids? Remember, always argues, never tires. Okay, this is essential. This is an essential amino acid. Now here is another list of the neurotransmitters with their corresponding biosynthetic precursors. What I want you to memorize are the following. Glutamine, the precursor is glutamate. Glutamate, the precursor is alpha-ketoglutarate. And the most interesting here is that GABA, which is inhibitory, the precursor is actually glutamate, which is excitatory. We'll be mentioning the others in our biochem masterclass, but for now, remember glutamine and GABA come from glutamate, and glutamate comes from alpha-ketoglutarate. Now, in what very important biochemical pathway would you encounter alpha-ketoglutarate? Okay, alpha-ketoglutarate is a very important substrate in what pathway? Okay, very good. It's the Krebs cycle, or the tricyclic carboxylic acid, TCA. Now, which neurotransmitter is found in the preganglionic area and the neuromuscular junction? Preganglionic, whether it's sympathetic preganglionic or parasympathetic preganglionic. Okay, it is acetylcholine. And always remember, acetylcholine is secreted in quanta at the neuromuscular junction. Now, what neurotransmitter is found in the postganglionic? Sympathetic. What neurotransmitter is found in the postganglionic? Sympathetic neurons. So this is, of course, norepinephrine. Now, what part of the brain produces acetylcholine? What specific nucleus is very rich in cholinergic neurons? So I'm giving you a hint. It is a nucleus. So this is the nucleus basalis of Maynard, which you find in the basal ganglia. So nucleus basalis of Maynard. So here, this is where the nucleus basalis of Maynard is. Now, please be aware of these two enzymes in acetylcholine synthesis. So for synthesis, it's choline acetyltransferase. For degradation, it's acetylcholinesterase. So I want everyone to remember that. Acetylcholinesterase. Okay. Acetylcholinesterase is degradation. It degrades acetylcholine to choline and acetate. Choline acetyltransferase is for synthesis. So it synthesizes acetylcholine from acetyl-CoA and choline. Now, tip, if they don't use the term degradation, they're going to mention the term inactivation. So acetylcholine is broken down, inactivated, or degraded to choline. and acetic acid. So this is where cholinesterase or acetylcholinesterase comes in. This is, of course, a reaction of hydrolysis. If you inhibit this enzyme, there will be increased acetylcholine. Can you give me two important diseases? They're both neurologic, two important neurologic diseases which utilizes as part of its therapeutics acetylcholinesterase inhibitors. Two neurologic diseases. Okay. Myasthenia is correct. Okay, myasthenia is correct. Second is Alzheimer's disease or dementia. Okay, so we have MG, then we have Alzheimer's disease. Okay, these are the two major neurologic diseases that utilizes acetylcholinesterase inhibitors. Okay, so please remember that. Now, question. In Lambert-Eaton myasthenic syndrome, is the problem acetylcholine? What is the problem in LEMS? Okay, pathophysio. The problem is the calcium channels. Okay, what specific calcium channels? It is the voltage-gated calcium channels. Okay, it's the voltage-gated calcium channels. Okay, so please take note of that. Now, there are two main cholinergic receptors. We have the muscarinic and we have the nicotinic receptors. Question: which receptor is involved in myasthenia gravis? Is it muscarinic or is it nicotinic? Is it muscarinic or is it nicotinic? So in myasthenia gravis, it is the nicotinic receptors. While in organophosphate poisoning, it is the muscarinic. So please remember that. In organophosphate poisoning, the problem is the muscarinic receptors. In myasthenia gravis, the problem is the nicotinic receptors. Now, memorize this by heart. The muscarinic acetylcholine receptors are blocked by atropine. That is why the drug of choice for organophosphate poisoning is atropine. The drug of choice for organophosphate poisoning is atropine. So please take note of that. Now, for the cholinesterase inhibitors, we have reversible and we have irreversible cholinesterase inhibitors. Now, we use the reversible cholinesterase inhibitors in Alzheimer's disease, as well as myasthenia gravis. So donepezil is first line. Other cholinesterase inhibitors are galantamine and rivastigmine, and of course, the older cholinesterase inhibitors, which has been pulled out of the market because of side effects, is tacrine. In myasthenia gravis, the drug of choice is pyridostigmine. Intravenous form is neostigmine. So please take note of that. And for testing, for the diagnosis, what is utilized is edrophonium, which we also call tensilon. Edrophonium is tensilon. This is for diagnostics, not treatment. That's why it's called tensilon tests. Now, in organophosphates, especially the pesticides, what happens is it phosphorylates acetylcholine. Okay, it phosphorylates acetylcholine, thereby reducing the ability of cholinesterase to break down the neurotransmitter. So if cholinesterase is not inhibited and acetylcholine is not broken down, there's going to be an increase in acetylcholine. And this will explain the manifestations of organophosphate. Increased secretions, such as salivation. There's going to be bradycardia, since this is cholinergic or parasympathetic. There's also going to be incontinence, bowel and bladder incontinence. It's going to get messy because this is parasympathetic or cholinergic stimulation. So I want you to understand this and I want you to master the concept. So for Alzheimer's disease, this also has a depletion of acetylcholine. Myasthenia gravis, the problem here is antibody-mediated blockade of the receptors. Okay, you have antibodies against the acetylcholine receptors. Now, the next neurotransmitter is going to be DOPA, norepi, and epinephrine. Now, what do we collectively call these neurotransmitters? What do we collectively call these neurotransmitters? DOPA, norepi, and epi. We call them catecholamines. Okay, and catecholamines are produced by what layer of the adrenals? Is it cortex or is it medulla? So it is produced by the adrenal medulla. Now, from a biochem point of view, the precursor of your catecholamines is tyrosine. And the precursor of tyrosine is phenylalanine. So I hope everyone got that. So phenylalanine is the precursor of tyrosine. Tyrosine is converted to L-DOPA. That's after a hydroxylation reaction. L-DOPA undergoes decarboxylation to become dopamine. Dopamine becomes norepi, and norepi becomes epinephrine. Now, question: what is the enzyme that reuptakes the catecholamines? What is the enzyme responsible for the reuptake or the breakdown of your catecholamines? What is that enzyme? Okay, very good. So norepinephrine, NET, that's reuptake. Okay, that is the reuptake. So please remember that. So I want you to scan this pathway. Please scan this pathway. Someone messaged your MAO, or the monoamine oxidase. It's the enzyme responsible in the breakdown of serotonin, that's 5-HT, norepi, epi, and dopamine. Okay, so involved yung serotonin also. That's monoamine oxidase. Please make sure you familiarize yourself with this. Forget your transporter, huh? The net of the norepinephrine transporter. So this is the one responsible for the reuptake of norepinephrine. Now question, what enzyme would inactivate norepinephrine? What enzyme would inactivate norepinephrine? Okay, so you have two. One is COMT, which I hope everyone is still familiar with. Let me just write this down. This is catechol. O methyltransferase. Okay, that is COMT. Catechol O methyltransferase. And of course, we have MAO, or monoamine oxidase. So I want everyone to remember that. Okay. Get this phenylalanine hydroxylase, dopa decarboxylase. Question, what is the disease that arises because of a deficiency in phenylalanine hydroxylase? What is that disease? Okay, that's PKU, or phenylketonuria. And how does the urine smell of PKU? Okay, this is the mousy odor. Okay, the mousy odor. Give me the disease if the urine is black. Give me the disease if the urine is black, or black diaper syndrome. Okay, very good. This is alkaptonuria. Okay, alkaptonuria if the urine is black. Now, what is the neurotransmitter produced by the locus coeruleus? What is the neurotransmitter produced by the locus coeruleus? Okay, so this is norepinephrine. A norepinephrine. So here is the locus coeruleus. That is the part of the brain you have to memorize when it comes to norepinephrine. Now, when it comes to norepinephrine, we have a clinical pearl here, and this is Pheochromocytoma. I simply want you to memorize the first three: headache, sweating, palpitations, and don't forget to add the hypertension. Okay, just memorize those three: headache, sweating, palpitations, and hypertension. Don't forget the vanillimandelic acid, as well as the plasma metanephrine, which is which are the metabolites of pheochromocytoma. So please remember this. So what is the pattern that you would encounter? Microscopic pattern of the chromaffin cells in pheochromocytoma. Who has been reading the microscopic pattern? Okay. Now, I want you to remember the chromatin is the salt and pepper. Okay, so clarification lang ha. The chromatin is the salt and pepper appearance. However, the pattern, okay, of the chromaffin cells forming clusters or nests, this is called the Zellballen. Okay, the Zellballen pattern. So I hope everyone got that, huh? The Zellballen pattern is the pattern of the chromaffin cells clustering. The chromatin appearance, that is the salt and pepper appearance. And what antihypertensive would you give to treat someone with pheochromocytoma? What antihypertensive would you give? Okay, very good. You're going to give phenoxybenzamine. Now, the neurotransmitter produced by the median raphe nuclei. What is the neurotransmitter produced by the median raphe nuclei? So it is serotonin. So serotonin is the neurotransmitter produced by the midline raphe nuclei. So here, this is the median raphe nuclei. Very, very important part of the midbrain. Next, what is the biochemical name of serotonin? The biochemical name of serotonin. So we have 5-hydroxytryptamine. 5-hydroxytryptamine. And what tumor has an increase in the metabolite 5-HIAA or 5-hydroxyindole acetic acid? 5-hydroxyindole acetic acid. Okay, very good. So memorize the 5-HIAA or the 5-hydroxyindole acetic acid. Okay, this is, of course, a carcinoid tumor, which is usually located in the appendix. It's usually located in the appendix. And what is the toxin that blocks acetylcholine? What is the toxin that blocks acetylcholine? Okay, very good. It's botulinum toxin. A Botox or botulinum toxin would block acetylcholine. And what is the toxin that blocks both GABA and glycine? Okay, the toxin is caused by Clostridium. So this is tetanospasmine. Tetanospasmine. Now, glutamate. Is glutamate excitatory or is it inhibitory? What is glutamate? Is it excitatory or is it inhibitory? Okay, glutamate is excitatory. So I want everyone to remember this reaction wherein glutamate undergoes decarboxylation to become GABA. GABA undergoes transamination, it becomes succinate. Succinate enters the Krebs cycle. I would like to remind everyone that glutamate plays a very important role in our body's mechanism of disposing excess nitrogen or waste nitrogen. Ammonia is going to be excreted predominantly as urea, and this is going to be synthesized in the liver. Now, question, what is the rate limiting enzyme for urea synthesis? What is the rate limiting enzyme for urea synthesis? What is the rate limiting enzyme for urea synthesis? What do we call this famous enzyme? Okay, so this is carbamoyl phosphate. Okay, carbamoyl phosphate. And where does urea synthesis occur? Where's the site of metabolism? So the site of metabolism for urea synthesis occurs both in the cytosol as well as the mitochondria. Now, the main excitatory neurotransmitter of the brain, the main excitatory neurotransmitter of the brain. So the main excitatory neurotransmitter, this is glutamate. Now, in Parkinson's disease, what neurotransmitter is involved? So this is, of course, dopamine. And in what part of the brain is dopamine produced? Abundantly. It's produced in the substantia nigra, particularly the substantia nigra pars compacta. The substantia nigra pars compacta. Now here, we've basically mentioned these neurotransmitters with the exception of the endorphins. Now, I just want to remind everyone, eating disorders, OCD, depression, this is serotonin. One of the favorite questions in the boards is the use of SSRIs as first line for depression. For GABA, this is associated with anxiety, as well as seizures and tremors, and also insomnia. Glutamate is associated with schizophrenia, as well as seizures and even migraines. I'd like to add that migraine is also associated with serotonin. Then endorphins resemble opioids. Endorphins are very important for pain relief as well as response to stress. So I'd like to give you a minute to go over this table. Now, what is responsible? What part of the brain is responsible for the circadian rhythm? It also regulates sex, thirst, appetite, as well as temperature. The key word here is the circadian rhythm. So this is, of course, the hypothalamus. Now, what is the master clock of the body? What is the master clock of the body? Very important for circadian rhythm. Okay, very good. It's the suprachiasmatic nucleus. And this is, of course, regulated by the pineal gland. It's regulated by the pineal gland. What is the vomiting center, or the part of the brain responsible for coughing, vomiting, and swallowing? Vomiting, coughing, and swallowing. So this is known as, this is of course the medulla, particularly the area postrema. Now, what cranial nerves are involved in the gag reflex? Cranial nerves for the gag reflex. Okay, it's cranial nerve 9, it's cranial nerve 10. Okay. 9 and 10. Please take note of this. Now, where would you find the apneustic and the pneumotaxic center? Apneustic and the pneumotaxic center. This is, of course, found in the pons. So here, this is the pons. This is the pneumotaxic center, and this is the apneustic center. I always remind students, PAP. Okay, PAP, pons, is apneustic and pneumotaxic. Now, what important centers for respiration do you find in the medulla? What important centers for respiration do you find in the medulla? Okay, very good. You have the dorsal respiratory group, and you have the ventral respiratory group. DRG and VRG are found in the medulla. Okay, so here the apneustic center, basically the apneustic center shortens expiration. So it shortens expiration and is responsible for prolonged inspiration. Apneustic, prolonged inspiration, shortened expiration. Take note of this, shortens expiration, prolonged inspiration. Now, what nuclei is responsible for the secretion of antidiuretic hormone or your arginine vasopressin? So this is the supraoptic nuclei. And which nuclei is responsible for oxytocin secretion? Okay, which nuclei is responsible for oxytocin secretion? So oxytocin secretion, this is the paraventricular nuclei. Okay, the paraventricular nuclei. And which part or specific nuclei is responsible for satiety? Responsible for satiety. So it is the ventromedial. Ventromedial nucleus. Ventromedial nucleus. And I hope everyone remembers the hunger hormone, which is ghrelin. Hunger hormone. And don't forget, leptin is the satiety hormone. Okay, leptin is the satiety hormone. And of course, we have adiponectin. Adiponectin. This is produced by the adipocytes and plays a very important role in the regulation of glucose. So this is associated with metabolic syndrome and diabetes mellitus.